Hi, Sydney.
You hear me okay?
Yes.
So it says you. Do y'all read my name on y'all side?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I know we're just waiting on Dr. Murillo. I hope she can get in.
Hey, so you know what? I'm not a. Am I a speaker?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm nervous. I'm confused.
It's okay. You're all good.
Okay, because I see on your corners that you have like a little mute and microphone.
Yeah.
I didn't see that, so I guess I have it at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I know we have a few people in here, so hi to people.
Spill the beans.
Yeah, don't spill the beans.
Don't give the show away.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
Contemplated saying the host with the most, but that's not.
That was a missed opportunity, I think.
I know, right? Let me reach out to Dr. Murillo.
I think I might be. Yes. Oh my God. I got in. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Bye. Oh my God, you all.
You made it. We already have a few people in here with us.
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I tried like 4 different ways. I finally gave up, called my IT, and I said, wait, I think if I just cut and paste the link and go to Google and put it there, that'll get me in. So
yeah, no worries. I think this whole just using technology in general.
yeah, and I did all the steps. Not sure, but anyways, I'm glad I made it.
Yeah. So it's 3:00 and I'll go ahead and get it started. Just so we can, get y'all's input, and I'm very excited to have you guys here. So good afternoon, everyone. Hello, how are you? Welcome to our session. And we are organizing communities and navigating systems of food access during COVID-19. And I will be your moderator for this session. My name is Jolena Vendaño, and I work at Go Austin, Vamos Austin. And so before I let these lovely women introduce themselves, just want to kind of let you all know that we are hoping that today you leave knowing a little bit more about how these organizations had to kind of innovate their work during this time, how they had equity in the forefront of their work, the importance of partnerships, and then how their network of residents were resilient throughout this process. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. But I will let them introduce themselves, the amazing work that they're doing, their organizations. And if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat room and looking at questions and be incorporating that in our discussion. Otherwise, I think we are good to go. So without further ado, I'll introduce Dr. Rosa Maria Murillo from El Buen Samaritano.
Hi, everybody. I'm just excited that I was able to get in. I still can't get over it. I'm catching up to 21st century technology. So just kind of go like this when I'm about to run out of my time, Jolene. So I came to El Buen Samaritano about a year and more than a half ago, like a year and a half or so ago, July. It was still pre-COVID. El Buen was undergoing tremendous transformation as an organization. It had just affiliated its healthcare services to another entity, Lone Star Circle of Care. And so we were in process of transforming who El Buen was going to become. And so right as we were doing that, COVID hit. So I'll share a little bit with you about COVID, what we did as a result of COVID. But El Buen has been around in the community for well over 30 years. And it focuses on providing resources, connections, being a bridge for the Latino immigrant community. Right now is the Latino immigrant community plus whoever needs help. And I'm going to apologize because they're working on my roof. So we hear lots of noise. I'm sorry. So pre-COVID, we were providing workforce programs like English as a second language, computer literacy, youth services, both academic, tutoring, enrichment, as well as summer camps for youth. We were also providing health access and health literacy programming, since our healthcare clinic partner is right there with us, doing lots of work with them to refer back and forth. And then we were also providing pantry services, right? So we're moving along, redesigning that, figuring out how that's going to be even better. COVID hits, and we had to, like all of you, pause and strategize. How are we going to set ourselves up to respond to the emergency at hand? So I'm going to give you 3 numbers: 2 days, 4 times, 20,000 visits. Back in March 17, El Buen team came together, and in a span of 2 days, we had to figure out how we were going to reconfigure our pantry services, right? To serve in a safer way community. So in 2 days, we developed a plan, we developed a drive-through system, and also had to figure out how to do that without volunteers. The majority, up until COVID, I would say 80% of our work was also provided between staff, and then 80% were volunteers. So we had to do without volunteers. So in 2 days, we established that drive-through pantry method and expanded our capacity to 4 times what we were serving before. So we were used to doing about 100 people per week. We were doing, in those early days, sometimes 200, 250 families per day. You can imagine, I mean, we had long nights, so lines. So 2 days, 4 times the capacity, and by the end of 2020, we had received 20,000 family visits to the pantry. And those 20,000 family visits also incorporate, we added a home delivery method to our process. So we know that not everybody can come and to our pantry and do a drive-through. So we partner with organizations that we knew had families that needed food but couldn't come. And through those partners, and thanks to the Central Texas Food Bank, we were able to expand to 400 additional families per week. So in total, between the pantry, 200 families or so, and our partnerships of 400, we were doing around 600 to 700 families per week, of providing access to food. And this was just in 2 days that we were open. So, talk about innovation, and I'm going to focus the dialogue, of course, in the pantry work. Of course, all of our programs that we had pre-COVID we pivoted to online services. So adult education, we went from serving 300 students per semester, person to person, to serving 150 students online, which I was surprised, right? I was just like, okay, if we can get 50 students to participate with us. And we got to 150, and part of that had to do with us also providing technology and online resources, like a hotspot for them to be able to join. Our goal also in the youth services, our goal was to retain the 35, 40 families that we had with us pre-COVID into COVID period. So we provided technology, laptops, Chromebooks, and hotspots to the youth so that they could participate in our after-school academic development programming, as well as our summer programming. And part of that also included providing them access to food. So all of our programming was, we pivoted to online. The same with our health education and health literacy programming. We're conducting some one-on-one sessions with people that needed information and people that needed referrals. We did, online, phone, education, and referrals to health services. But back to the food pantry and innovation, right? So, like, how else can we create access? Innovation is required in this time so that we create additional access. And forgive me, I'm not reading all the, if there's notes, questions, Jolene, let me know, okay? So for us, the innovation to create access, of course, was the pantry drive-through, but also the partnerships with Avance, Todos Juntos, Safe. I know I'm going to forget some of them. Refugee services, some of the churches, Any Baby Can. Just different organizations that were willing to say, hey, if you secure the food for us, we'll go pick it up and deliver it to the families. So that was one way that we created additional access to food. The other way is that we started partnering with different groups to provide. Do you all remember during the July 4th weekend when AISD schools were closed and youth couldn't get their food? We agreed to fill that gap and provided food, meals during that week so that students could have meals. Right now, we're also partnering with 2 other organizations to provide meals for the elderly. As for older adults, as we were doing all this, we talked to families about other needs. So think about it, diapers, right? People started asking us, do you have any diapers? So we partner with the diaper bank to be able to provide diapers to families that needed them. The other one that you don't usually think about, but food for their pets, like dogs and cats. And so again, the Humane Society and other amazing groups provided us with food so that we could make that available to families. Then what we started to do is through our pantry services and our partners, mostly through the pantry services, we started to ask, what else are you needing? So that allowed us to get a better picture of what other needs people had, and that we could connect them, right? So we have community health workers doing brief intake as people are going through the drive-through line. And if somebody says they need information around family planning, we connect them. If they need whatever information they might need. If they need, at one point we were providing cash assistance. So if they needed cash assistance, we connected them to those resources. And so our pantry line services really serve to help us create a comprehensive approach to serving community.
So as you're talking about serving communities, I think that's a good segue to kind of introduce the other two speakers, Erika and Sydney. I'll have you all kind of introduce yourselves, and then we'll go back to that conversation of innovation in partnerships. But I do want them to have a chance to kind of introduce themselves, who they're representing, and then go into that conversation, because I hear a lot of things that these three organizations are doing together, right? And how do those connect? So if it's okay with you, Dr. Murillo, I'll have Erika introduce herself.
Yes, I'm sorry, you all.
That is all good. That is perfect. No, I love it. Erika, introduce yourself. Sydney, introduce yourselves, and then we can go into this deep discussion that listen, y'all, I've had discussions with these three amazing women, and you can catch us talking for a long time about everything and anything. And I think this is a specific topic that really got us talking. So I'll pass it on to you, Erika.
Sure. I see that we have 27 viewers, so I just want to say hello, hola. My name is Erika Reyes. I work for Go Austin, Vamos Austin, known out in the community as GAVA. I'm the Park and Nutrition Lead Organizer. At GAVA, our focus is to build community power for health equity. Everything we do at GAVA is community-driven, resident-led. We believe in the right of self-determination, and the priorities we champion are always informed by the voices, perspectives, and lived experience of those who live in the neighborhoods we serve. At GAVA seeks to reduce the negative impacts of systemic health inequities in the following three ways. One is by increasing access to physical activity, improve nutrition, build community power, and foster permanency. In my role, I connect, support, develop residents into leadership roles in organizing skills from the Eastern Crescent communities. At this moment, one of our biggest lead participants has been in partnership with Urban Roots, where we launched a pilot distribution, a produce distribution in early 2020, back in April, when the pandemic started. Go into details, I will let Sydney talk about her role at Urban Roots, and then I will share more of that information.
Thanks, Erika. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney. I am the Community Engagement Program Manager at Urban Roots. I've been with the team for about 1.5 years now, and our main hub is a 3.5-acre farm in East Austin. And we're also in the very early stages of building a new farm in Southeast Austin. Our mission is to use food and farming to transform the lives of young people and inspire, engage, and nourish the community. And we get to do that with the help of so many people, including other organizations like the ones here today, volunteers and youth. It really is a huge community effort. And really quick, I just like to focus a little bit on the youth aspect. All of the work that youth participate in at Urban Roots is part of our paid internships or our fellowship. Right now, we have a Food and Leadership Fellowship for youth ages 17 to 23, and that starts in February. They spend a significant amount of time on the farm, hands-on time at the farm, and they get to have a more close-up relationship with how food is grown and how it gets into the hands of our food access partners. And we also have the South Austin internship, which is composed of high school students that live in or attend school around the area that surrounds the new farm in Southeast Austin. And they really are getting to set the foundation for that farm through relationship building in the community. And they also get to learn about the food distribution partnership that we have with GABA that Erika just mentioned. And soon we'll be recruiting for our summer farm internship. So if you don't follow us on social media, here's a quick plug. Keep an eye out for that. The application will open up soon. And again, that's for high school students. They get paid to work on the farm, and it's a ton of fun. In addition to the projects that they get to participate in around food access and farming, all of our programs also include workshops that cover topics that intersect with food access, like racial equity, the history of agriculture, gender identity, and a lot of other things. So I'm talking a lot about the youth because that's sort of, I think, more, we would describe food and farming as more of the conduit that we use to connect with youth and with the greater Austin community. And I think we recognize that food and the process of growing it is sustenance for the body, and also for our culture and our relationships with each other. And it's how we connect with our past, our present, our future. We connect with relationships, or the way that we connect with relationships from the past, like energetically, even things that maybe we were not there for. It's a really special way to connect with one another. And the value of those experiences, I think, are really difficult to quantify. But to give you all an idea, all of those efforts last year led to us growing over 40,000 pounds of food. 21,000 pounds of that food was donated. And at the end of each program, we just hope that youth take with them new friendships, of course, a deeper understanding of how their voices can shape the world around them, and how much can be accomplished when you set intentions together as a community, especially when it comes to understanding the ways that food access impacts their own communities that they live in. So that's Urban Roots in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Sydney, Erika, and Dr. Murillo. One of the things, a key thing that I heard from each and every one of you is that your work is a lot of community facing, right? Outdoor facing and interacting a lot with community. And, you know, COVID happened, pandemic happened, and we had to completely shift the way that we were working. So I guess I want to open up our discussion with I know, Dr. Murillo, you talked a little bit about the innovation piece that y'all had to kind of, you know, with their pantry and all those pieces. So I just want to ask all of you, what pieces of your work had to be innovative, quote unquote, and what are the things that you are going to keep post-pandemic, things that you like, that you were like, duh, that's something we should have continued with, or, you know, or things that like they worked at its time, let's do something else kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I can start it off, just kind of jumping back to the pilot where Urban Roots partnership, right? So this produce distribution pilot, it was a conversation among us, right? You know, among the organizers and the leadership team. You know, just kind of working on just really the basic, right, office work stuff, the MOUs and all of that, right? It hadn't even had a chance to really share that information out to the community because we were just working on that side, right? So then when we were ready to kind of communicate the information and start organizing with the community on how we were going to organize and develop these residents, lead residents in these teams so they can organize among each other in their street or their neighborhoods to create teams, right? Where it's based off with a resident leader and 3 to 7 in each team. So yeah, so then the pandemic happened and we kind of had to jump in because the need was that we needed access to food. Just that, like Dr. Murillo is like, we had to get creative, and in less than a month, we were distributing the produce to residents. That led us to an opportunity of a resident from the community to be this person who picks up the orders at the farm and delivers them to each team's the lead or individuals' homes, right? But with that said, as a community, we go where the people are, right? We meet them in person. We have one-on-ones with them. We do all the grassroots that comes with that community organizing. But then, in the pandemic, we couldn't do that, right? Get really creative. And then when we had that creativity, we found out that a lot of our residents didn't even have access to technology, internet or laptops. So then we even had to get more creative. Is like, so what do they really have in front of them right now? And that was just like the apps that they use, like the WhatsApp, the Facebook Messenger, Telegram, or just texting in general, and so as we continue organizing, we were able to get them on Zoom, and still doing that grassroots work in another way, right? And then you still feel that disconnection, but it was working because we were able to do the one thing that we were trying to do with this program was, giving that food access to those residents in need, right, at that moment. So that was pretty awesome that we just had to get creative on how we were communicating with them, sending them voice messages, popping up on Messenger. Just getting super, super creative in that aspect. And I think that is one thing that I might keep if we go back to the normal, is that having meetings on Zoom, it's not that bad, because you'll have other opportunities when that comes to meet with them in person meetings. But then again, that's going to give more access to people who don't have access to transportation, or their parents. They have small children or they're elderly. So then again, it's like, why weren't we doing this in the first place, instead of such a great meeting, evening meeting, and then nobody shows up and then you question why, but we know the answers, but we weren't getting creative until now. So I really felt that I wasn't losing the grassroots because we were still able to connect with residents and they were able to connect that information to other residents. And so, yeah, so that is the one way that I felt that we were doing still that connection with the community.
Thank you, Erika. Sydney, it looks like you wanted to say something.
Sure, I'm ready. So this question feels like we could focus on this thing for the whole time period that we have here together. But then also last year feels kind of like a blur because everything just moved so quickly. And I think that we were so lucky that we had already started this conversation pre-pandemic with GABA around food distribution. And what Erika described about us having to pivot very quickly, I think would have happened. I believe in our team so much, I think it would have happened even if we didn't already have those things sort of in place or hadn't already started those conversations, because we were really determined to make it move. And on the youth aspect of it, it was really similar to, I think, the way teachers had to pivot, which was like figure out the whole online thing, how to get youth connected online and how to make them feel like they're part of a community online. And even though it had its challenges, I feel like there were some really key things that I want to take with me, is that youth know technology better than I do. And I know I knew that already, but it became super apparent when we actually started meeting with them, because I was so worried about making sure I did the things right on my end, when most of the time they figure it out before you even need to teach it to them. So I think they get the credit on that innovation part. And I think for the farm itself, so we operate mostly with Urban Roots staff and volunteers and youth, different programs throughout the year. And so we had to rely really heavily on community members who could consistently show up. And so we put together this, what we called, and still call, we still are relying on them to help us out, our community crews. So they show up at more regular intervals rather than people signing up randomly online. So that way it would be safer and more of a community where people could feel connected to each other and sort of responsible for each other too. I think I'm sharing that responsibility to keep each other safe. And that, I think, I personally would love to see that stick around in the organization, to have like a regular group of people who show up. I think that has fostered a really, just a greater sense of community within those volunteers. And without them, I don't know that we could have done it, because the land does not pause. Things just keep growing. And the way the timing worked out, I think, things had already been set in motion for the spring, and then the pandemic started, and then like all these things are growing. So we have to do something about it, So it was, I think that was a really big part of how we were able to pivot quickly. And then circling back to the partnership that we have with GABA, having that in place, having the food, having a home for the food to go to. You can grow as much food as you'd like, but if you don't have pathways for it to go to people, what's the point, Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very much, I'm hearing y'all say that you went into this as a response, right, to food insecurity, but through that process, you built community, or you're building community, whether it's with the youth or that community crew, or whether it's with residents and creating that accessibility. So just something that I heard y'all and wanted to note and kind of highlight that's kind of how it played out, right? Dr. Murillo, I heard you say some of the innovations that you guys have been doing. So what are some things that you guys are going to keep in place, or what's going on?
Yes. So just want to share this thought before I talk about what we're going to keep in place. Creating what I'm about to share with you is, like, you all know these things. These are basics. These are things that we knew pre-COVID, right? COVID just forced us to go 1,000 miles an hour. Or at least I should say, it forced me to go 1,000 miles an hour innovating. And really, if you think about it, innovating, there were things that we knew we had to do. And now we have to get into that fire and do them. And do them in an environment where at any point we are putting ourselves at risk, because those of us in the food industry, in the food pantry industry, every day that we are open to serve the public, we put ourselves at risk. But one of the pieces for me is around access, right? We talk about innovation. Well, innovation for us meant that we had to move 1,000 miles an hour and had to turn 1,000 miles an hour. We had to take risk. We had to be courageous, because some of those risks might make us fail and fall really, really far. But that's what innovation requires, right? It required us as an organization to be willing to fail to serve community. And so if we're not willing to fail, we're not going to create access. Period. At least that's what it was for us. And we cannot create access without paying attention to equity, right? And so what were some of the things that we had to do to have equity, to create equity, right? We're talking about access and equity. It meant that we had to, if somebody walked, we had women that would walk 3 to 4 miles to our pantry with their kids, without any food, without any cash, needing food. And so we had to be willing to keep our pantry, even though they didn't drive to our pantry, they walked. We had to be willing to have a walk-up option to arrive for people. We had to be willing to, if somebody came at a non-pantry day and needed food, we had to be willing to do that. That is what equity looks like. We also knew that we couldn't do this by ourselves, right? We had to have partners. And to your question, Jolene, what we will keep, it's not that we didn't know we needed partners pre-COVID, is that we definitely know that we need partners now. And we're going to keep those partnerships. We have really strong partnerships and amazing supporters that are working with us to create more access by providing food to us, and we distributing the food to others, whether it's driving through or home delivery, or expanding El Buen's pantry, like having mini pantries throughout, especially the Eastern Crescent. So right now, we are talking with key organizations in that Eastern Crescent that would provide some space for us. We secure the food, we take it there and distribute it. Mobile pantries, right? That's not new, but it's also something that that we are working to reinstate and to keep. And I mean, I can tell you a lot more things that we're going to keep, but there's 3 things that drive our work at El Buen. COVID has affected the people we serve in 3 ways. It's taking away their ability, their access to food. It's taking away their ability to maintain stable shelter, and it's taking away their sense of safety and security. And so when we talk about providing access to food and somebody is in front of us feeling insecure, having mental health challenges, right? Anxiety, is about to be evicted, right there and then, we have to be able to respond by connecting them. And so that is one thing that we knew before COVID, but it's like up in front of us. I like to say and share with people that I thought what need was, and COVID has truly humbled me because I really didn't know what need was. And so that's personally, at my personal level, what I will keep is the understanding of what true need is. Every day that we work with people whose ability to have food, ability to have a home and feel secure is at stake.
Thank you for sharing those words. It's true, right? We are here to talk about food, but we forget all the other kind of social determinants, right, that are deterring because of this pandemic. And thank you for sharing that anecdote and things. And I heard you talk specifically about accessibility, right? And one thing that I heard Sydney and Erika mention too in the beginning was that how that creative engagement was to accessibility of food, right? how they were engaging residents, specifically organizing residents so they could receive produce, and engaging the youth to talk to these residents to get that food on there. And Dr. Murillo, you specifically got right to the point of equity, right? When we're talking about accessibility, we're talking about equity. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how are you guys kind of practicing that equitable food access within your if you can give us some examples, some anecdotes, some stories of that.
I can share something story or one of the teams that have developed through this whole transition. It's like many of them were needing access to this produce, right? But many of them did not have the money because through this pilot, residents get a 10-pound box of produce, everything from potatoes, bell peppers, chard, kale, depending on what vegetables are growing in season, right? It's a $30 value, but pay what they can, everything from $1 to $10 per box, right? So then again, it was such a great, program to launch because they were getting access to that food, right? But then we went into the situation where a lot of residents were losing their jobs, right? Or a lot of mothers had to quit their jobs to stay home because their kids had to do virtual schooling. Then, it's like, how do we give access to, we're as an organization, we're giving access to the residents, but many of them can't even pay for it, right? So then a lot of the organizing among each other to support. They were creating something called tandas, where it's, like today, it's going to be Jolene who's going to put in the $30 for 6 boxes. It's her turn to pay those $30. And then the next week, it's going to be Sydney. And then the next week, Erica. And then the next week, Rosa Maria, right? So they were being, and, they were supporting each other. They were organizing among each other. They were giving them that accessibility that they needed. They were getting access to food, creative in their ways on how among each other they were going to support each other to give that access to food. Then where other residents and other teams were not able to even pay, but they weren't able to organize each other in that way, or they didn't have the funds to organize each other in that way. So then they even got a little bit of creativity, and they're like, okay, everybody's gonna pitch in 50 cents to pitch in for the other team. So it's like we weren't losing, they were developing those skills of organizing, but then again, they were supporting each other as a community, as their teams, as their neighborhoods, from their streets, on how to give that access to food, So I think that was powerful because it wasn't coming from us, the organizers, it was coming from the community on how they were connecting the need, and how to get innovative in that equity and accessing everybody who needed some food during this time.
I can sort of build on what Erika just shared. So something that we realized early on is that the food that we are distributing needs to be relevant to the people who are eating it, meaning, is it something that they're familiar with? Is it something that's part of their cuisine? Is it something that they actually enjoy eating? And if it's something that they're not familiar with, are we doing what we need to do to make sure that they know how to cook it, or know how to incorporate it into their cuisine, or is there knowledge that they can share with each other? And so what we started doing, and really the residents started doing it first themselves, which was exchanging recipes and sharing, like, oh, I know this is actually great for soup, or you should roast this, or whatever cooking technique they might be able to offer each other. And since youth also receive these veggies. We just started this in the fall. Our youth that are part of the South Austin internship are meeting virtually with residents once a month. And just this month, they met to finally put together some recipes. And it was really, really special to hear them share this information with each other in a way that was, like I said, relevant to what they actually want to eat. Because I think when people are in need, they are almost expected to just take what you give them. And that's not really equity. That's not really an equitable way to get food to people. So I've been really enjoying these conversations where we talk about what is actually tasty for their meals, you know, not just like random vegetables. And there's a lot of folks who once you have a conversation about why we're growing these vegetables, what in season means, why the grocery store offers things year round and we don't, and when we talk about sustainability in that way, and how it's actually part of our greater process to make sure that the food that we're growing is, we're also keeping like a healthy relationship with the land that we're on. I think people are usually excited to hear that the food that they're getting is grown in a sustainable way. And if they get to meet with other residents and with youth, which residents are really excited to meet with youth at Urban Roots and vice versa, I think people find something really special in that.
I muted myself so you don't hear other rooms going on. Equity is about so many things, and the way that works best for me, so I'm doing this work, is about leveling the playing field. And what does it take to level the playing field outside of trying to change systems that have been so broken, that are right now highlighting all the disproportionalities and disparities that were already in our community. So I'm going to be very specific about right now what we did to level that playing field, and it is at three different areas, right? We started by looking inside. Like, how do our programs work? How are they working? And you know what? Now it's not program A, B, and C. It's one program that is going to integrate to ensure that the lives of the people we touch in each of these programs are connected through these services. So that was very important. The other piece is around looking outside. Who else is out there serving similar populations that we don't get to serve because they cannot come to the physical location? So who are those partners that we can provide a connection to food so that they can provide it to their families? That was another way. It's like creating a chain of power and powerful people, committed people to creating access. And then there's this other piece around leveling the playing field. We have to have a workforce, and I'll speak for El Buen's workforce, and I'm sure you all can relate to some of this. It is a small team of individuals that have been in response mode now for about 10 months. I lose track of time, right? And so think about the trauma that the pantry workers and other workers, healthcare workers, that they're experiencing. So I cannot, as an organization, as a leader of an organization that is providing access to food, create access, focus on equity, if my staff is in a constant state of stress that puts them at risk, whether it's risk of COVID or risk of anxiety and so many other risks. I cannot we can't create equity and access if our own people, if our own teams are having experiencing that trauma. So we don't often talk about how important it is to be nurturing and supporting the staff members that are moving along with us 1,000 miles an hour every day and are willing to turn on a moment's notice. They too need to be supported. For us, it meant that if they were working 3-4 times on site, we secure food for them. We call them food, right? Because at one point everything was closed and they couldn't just go and get food. So we brought food for them. Sometimes they needed they themselves, because not all of them were full-time. They were having some challenges, or their family members had challenges. So we make sure that they had food. So it's one area of equity that we don't often consider within the scope of how we serve community. And so those were the 3 areas that we focused on as we were, on a path to create access and equity.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Murillo, because you're right. It's not an area that we think about. So I heard, from the external, the services is having community be at the table, right? And co-creating a distribution model and in asking their input on the food that they're getting. And that's equity from one side, right? To the other side of making sure that the staff that are out there, that are on the line and frontliners and everything are also taken care of. So seeing equity from that spectrum from outside to inside, I think was a beautiful way.
I believe she froze. Jolene?
Can
you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Another point that I want us to kind of, for you all to give input is in resiliency. I mean, after all, this is the conference on food resilience, right? And how residents in your networks you think are adapting to the pandemic. I mean, we talked about accessibility, we talked about equity. I want us to talk about resiliency as it comes to organizing, to helping and getting food at the pantries.
Yeah, I can share a little bit. I think that resiliency, it means adapting, right? But I think that the residents have done the opposite. They stopped adapting and they started organizing to get change in that equity in what they needed, which was the food access, right? So just them, as an organizer, supporting them, developing them, supporting them and calling or advocating that advocacy component, right? To advocating what is that need on how they had adapted to the resources they had in their community. But when we hit the pandemic, that wasn't enough, So just kind of doing the opposite and stop adapting to what they had, but asking for what they really needed at that moment and what they need now, So as an organizer, that really, it motivates me to do my work. It motivates me to push them to think outside the box, that we have been adapting to something that we thought it was good enough for a community, which it wasn't, right? So just organizing around that advocacy and not asking that we need it. It's like something that the community deserves. So just advocating around that. And I felt like it was the opposite. They were not adapting anymore. They were making a change in their communities.
So true. Dr. Murillo?
I love it. Resiliency. My mother used to. This is my mother's way of teaching us resiliency. Amárrese los pantalones and get back out there again. All right. So I know you're all laughing, Sydney and Erica and Jolene, because we were talking about how we were raised, right? Latinos and communities of color are taught to get up over and over and over again. Whatever is happening, we are taught, whether directly or indirectly, to get up over and over again. And so in this pandemic, what we see with the people we serve is that every day they get up over and over again in the hopes of finding a new job, finding a way to not lose their home, finding food for their kids. They're getting up over and over again. And from our perspective as an organization, it is important that the people we serve trust us, right? Because we want to get up over and over again with them until we're done with this pandemic. And this is not a temporary response. It is a response that we are making permanent. And it's, as I share this with you, it's kind of, it feels strange for me to say this because like we knew that pre-pandemic. And again, it's like so upfront. Like the mirror has gotten almost to the as close as my my nose is like right here. We have to be able to get up over and over again. So whatever El Buen and Urban Roots and GABA, whatever we have to do, and I don't mean to speak for the organizations, we're going to do it. We're going to do it because the communities we serve are not just, they're not depending on us. They are us. We are them. And so that's really key for us as an organization when we look at resiliency, that we have no other option but to get up over and over again to be there for community.
Dr. Murillo, and to translate amárrate los pantalones, it's to tie your pants. For all those kind of asking what that meant, to tie your pants and get to work. So thank you so much for those words of wisdom. Sydney?
Dr. Murillo, I was also going to share something my mom would say. She always says, el que nace para el tamal del cielo caen las hojas. Is if you're born for the tamal, the corn husks will fall out of the sky, which is like, if you show up to do the work and you work hard, things will happen for you. And I think that's what I think of when I hear resiliency. And then I also kind of like what Erika was saying, though, I can't help but ask myself, why do the same communities have to be resilient in the first place over and over and over? And I love the way Erika put it, that it's not that they're done being resilient. It's just that they're going to start insisting, and rather than having to change constantly to adjust to the system that also is constantly changed. Just insisting on your own way, your own path. That's really beautiful. But anyways, I think what I've seen the most is, at least with our youth and the way that they're connecting with residents, and the way that I hear Erika talk about how residents connect with each other, is insisting on relationships and insisting on connections that you have with one another, and knowing that that's the way you're going to make it through whatever it is that you're going through, is with each other. And so I think that the virtual world, Zoom land, all of these ways that we're staying connected with each other is us insisting on our relationships. And I think that's kind of how we're getting through this, is with one another.
Sydney. So we have a couple minutes left, and we do have one question in the chat box. And I'll give either one or two of you a quick response on if you could share right here how you have transitioned your temporary response services into a more permanent support services. If any of you, if your organization has done that.
I'll take that. So back in March, I thought, oh, surely, by the end of summer, we'll be fine. We'll be going back to whatever we thought was normal before, right? And so what this temporary response, emergency response operation has done for El Buen, right? It has strengthened us as an organization. So we have created an infrastructure of technology, people, data, and partnerships that is an infrastructure that will continue way past the pandemic. But in our search for innovation, for access and equity, we have been, as an organization, able to reinforce that, not reinforce, I mean, in some cases, establish the infrastructure that allows us to move strategically forward, right? If we don't have technology, we can't have those Zoom meetings if we cannot create access for people, provide or figure out how to provide technology and internet access for people. There can be no engagement. We have worked on that. Technology, people, right? We focus on recruiting people that understand community, that understand the language, that are going to be there with us. And then data is really important. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. If we don't have data, it's really challenging to make decisions, right? Like, how do we move? Right now, El Buen is able to serve. El Buen is serving pretty much all zip codes in the Austin-Travis County area. Although the majority of our zip codes tend to be south and into the southeastern crescent. So data allows us to see that there's people coming all the way south from way north, or the way eastern crescent. So what do we do about that? What kind of partnerships do we have to establish? And so back to the last piece of this infrastructure is partnerships. As I said earlier, when I started monopolizing the presentation, the finding partners in the Eastern Crescent that we can provide access to food with is really important. So those are some of the things that are helping us to strengthen our permanent support services.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Murillo. Well, it looks like we only have 1 minute, and I really want to thank everyone who is on here, who were in this panel listening. And I want to really thank these amazing women doing the work that they're doing day in, day out. And please be sure to check out the organizations that were here today, El Buen Samaritano, Go Austin, Vamos Austin, and Urban Roots. And that was my plug-in for the social medias. So thank you so much, everyone. And I don't know if you guys have any last words for the folks on here.
Just thanks for being part of this conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. Take care of yourselves and go forth and do amazing work.
Thank you.
Bye. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Gracias.